Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host, as always. And joining me is my good friend Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Doing very well. I went back and looked at where we were last year, this day, and the live stream that we did a year ago was Chargers coaching candidates' best options after the first tier. Today, we're talking about playoff scenarios. So, doing pretty well.
Yeah, pretty different vibe around the fan base, vibe around obviously the two of us versus what we were feeling at this time last year. So, yeah, the end of the season, I think we barely talked about any of the actual games that the Chargers played. It was just kind of like coaching candidates, GM candidates, draft stuff we were already starting. So, again, very, very different vibe between this time and last year.
Yeah, thank goodness. And it's not even like we're doing this playoff scenario, discussion, and like maybe they'll make the playoffs. I think they're at 94, 97% chance to make it. I mean, at this point, it's just who they play, not necessarily if they're going to play. So good stuff.
Yeah, there's obviously a chance that the Chargers technically lose the next couple of games. Anything is possible, right? But as we have discussed, the Chargers have beaten all of the teams that they should have beaten. And so I think we can have some good confidence heading into next week, especially with like the extra added rest, that they can beat the Patriots, who, are kind of a mess right now. And then the Raiders. We'll see what happens. We're talking about the playoffs today. There is a scenario where the Chargers win on Saturday against the Patriots and then are able to rest starters against the Raiders in week 18 because the seeding is all essentially wrapped up at that point. So there's a ton of open scenarios for the NFC. The AFC is pretty cut and dry at this point in time. Obviously, seeding could potentially change. But we could be in a scenario where 1 through 7 is essentially wrapped up in week 18. So going to be very interesting to see kind of what happens there.
Yeah, that'd be a nice little extra bye, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you would get a mini bye, and then if you can rest starters, obviously that would help, especially a certain quarterback get his ankle healthy, and Jacob Dobbins is trying to get healthy, and Khalil Mack has had the double groin injury, and so having that chance to rest starters against the Raiders would be huge for this particular team.
Does anybody know in the chat? Maybe you can jump in. Did Harbaugh rest his starters before when they were at least the first seed at least once?
Yeah,
I don't know if they had it wrapped up by then, but curious if they rested their starters. I would imagine they would do. Harbaugh and these guys kind of feel like the group that would have them play a quarter or something, a couple series. Like Dobbins would probably want to get out there for a few touches. Although he's, depends on who's back.
So they did rest starters in 2012. Okay. I can't find the other opportunities. I don't know if they had another opportunity, but in 2012 they did rest starters.
Okay.
And he didn't play the starters in the preseason, so
yeah. Curious what they do there. At the end of the day, if there's an opportunity to get the 5th seed and Baltimore starting to let go of it, I think they're just going to play. And I mean, the good news is maybe they just destroy the Raiders and they're sitting starters by halftime anyway. So
like I said, if they have an opportunity to get the 5th seed, I still think they will play. But if seeding is wrapped up, the Blob Man is the one who I saw this scenario from. Let me make sure I get it right, and credit to him for pointing this out. I thought I retweeted this recently. Okay, so the scenario for the Chargers, if they can, so there's a chance they can be locked into the 6th seed in week after winning week 17. So obviously they have to beat the Patriots. The Bengals would have to beat the Broncos, and then the Ravens would have to beat Houston that particular week. So that's kind of their scenario. So that again, very, very possible. If the Bengals do beat the Broncos, there's a chance that the Broncos completely miss out on the playoffs. So that would be relatively interesting. So big Houston fans today. We want to see them lose, and then we'll kind of see what happens from there on out.
Yeah. And Steelers Ravens, is that right now at 10?
No, the Chiefs and Texans are currently playing.
Gotcha.
SMU and Penn State are currently playing. So it's a crazy Saturday of football. There's 3 college football playoff games, and then the Chiefs and Texans game, Steelers Ravens today. So it's pretty interesting day of football today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we get into our specific thing, so what we wanted to do today before we get into questions is kind of profile the potential first round matchups for the Chargers. And we can kind of get into like the probabilities of these particular matchups. But we wanted to kind of get ahead of this discussion of who would the Chargers rather play, what is the most beneficial to them. And we'll obviously, once the matchup is set, really dive into that particular matchup. Before we get started, of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. I hope everybody listening has partaken in today's wonderful slates of potential lineups across college football as well as the NFL. Apparently, CJ Stroud just got picked off, so that's super fun. It's a great way to kind of get some extra skin in the game. It's very user friendly. You can do flex plays where you can still win if you get 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. Obviously, if you get 5 out of 5, you're going to be doing great. So it is super easy to use. You can use it across any particular sport of choice. It really it has changed the way that I view watching sports, because I'm just more into it. Kind of in a similar way to how when I first started doing regular fantasy football did for me. So, nowadays with daily fantasy, it's a little easier to get into. I don't have to worry about injuries. I can pick who's available. It really is the best way to do it, in my opinion. You can go to prizepicks.com/guilty, prizepicks.com/guilty to get in on the action. All right, Tyler, let's jump in here to our way too early playoff preview. We're going to be evaluating the Chargers' potential playoff opponents. We're not really going to be talking about the Bengals or the Colts or teams like that or the Broncos. Because those are all teams that they wouldn't face potentially until like an AFC Championship game. And frankly, like we all know that those teams are likely not going to make it that far. So basically, we're going to be talking about the 5 teams in front of the Chargers that they could reasonably match up with in the first round.
Yep.
All right. First and foremost, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are currently playing right now, they are the 1 seed. They still somehow are 13-1. We'll see what happens today. Would be great if the Texans could pull off the upset. But for each of these teams, we're going to go over just kind of a little statistical evaluation, their best wins, or best showings, their worst losses, and their worst showings. And then we'll kind of discuss how the Chargers could potentially match up here. So obviously, we know the Chargers are 0-2 against the Kansas City Chiefs this year. The Chiefs, for what it's worth, are a little bit more of a middle-of-the-pack statistical evaluation than what we've been used to over the past few years, whether that was the high-flying offense or last year where they had the historically good defense. They are 8th in offensive EPA per play. They're one of the best teams in success rate, so they're very good at staying on schedule, but they have lost a little bit of that explosive play element on offense. Defensively, still very good, but not elite like they were last year. They're 9th in defensive EPA per play. And then Mahomes, this is I think his worst ranking of his career through 16 weeks in EPA per play, plus the completion percentage over expectation. So again, we are very familiar with this team. I think it is important to point out that for all of their dark magic wins, they are still, a very consensus top 10 team in terms of the statistics.
Yeah, this team, I get why Chargers fans would be amped to play the Chiefs because they almost beat them twice so far this season. So you at least know, unlike say like the Baltimore game, it's probably not going to be a blowout on the road or whatever it's going to be. It's probably going to be a close game. But man, for whatever reason, this Chiefs team, and we've talked about it now several times because they've played them several times. It's the fact that they can turn it on in the postseason that scares me to death. Whatever these numbers are, the offense probably does something ridiculous in the postseason, and we all hate it, but they just turn it on. They're going to be the most rested team. And they just have this odd voodoo magic. And as we've talked several times before, luck, the opponent just fumbling it at some random occurrence. They just are a weird, like Satan's team of destiny somehow this season. And that just scares me tremendously. So in terms of what matchup is probably the closest to a close loss for the Chargers or a close win for the Chargers, it's probably this one. But man, like these Chiefs, we've seen it time and time again. They turn it on in the postseason. They're going to be well rested. It's a tricky outing.
Yeah, it is. I think obviously, beating a team 3 times in 1 year is extremely difficult. The other aspect of this is that, as we discussed after the Chargers and Chiefs played the last time, the Chargers offense hasn't really been healthy when they've gone up against the Chiefs. And so that theoretically could change this time around. They would have J.K. Dobbins this time around. Ladd McConkey obviously was banged up against the Chiefs, or wait, did he miss that game entirely?
He missed it.
So Ladd McConkey didn't play. Hayden Hurst would be back. Will Disley would be healthy, etc. So theoretically, you could feel better about that, the way the offense could perform in that game, especially with how they were able to move the ball in the second half. So I understand why there would be some potential confidence in a matchup here, just given the familiarity. And I think the Chiefs are the 1 seed, but I think of the potential. So like the Chargers are not really a super possibility for the 7 seed. But when that was happening, like I think, of the potential 2 seeds that the Chargers could play, the Chiefs would probably be my top preference. But again, that might not even matter because the Chiefs could be the 1 seed, Chargers not the 7 seed, etc.
Yeah, no, I would feel differently about this Chiefs team if they were not the 1 seed in terms of where we'll kind of discuss their rankings among these matchups, but specifically because of these voodoo wins. Yeah, unfortunately, the 1 seed, it's going to make it tricky.
Yeah. So in terms of their best wins, obviously they've beaten the Chargers twice. Not a ton of great wins from the Chiefs or great showings this year. Again, as we've discussed at length, they did beat the Ravens, obviously in week 1. It came down to the wire. Isaiah Likely, if he wore half an inch or half a size smaller shoes, the Ravens probably win that game. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in overtime. Todd Bowles did not go for 2 at the end, as he should have, and then the Chiefs received the kickoff and marched right down the field and won. So not a ton of great wins. All of the Chiefs games have really come down to the wire. Again, not a lot of losses. They did lose to the Bills at home 30-21. Josh Allen was fantastic in that game. The Chiefs kind of looked out of sorts. That's their only loss of the season. But you look at their games against the bad teams they've placed, they've really needed some fortunate bounces to beat the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Falcons in all 3 of those games. So again, it's a tricky evaluation because statistically you would look at this profile and think, oh, like they're 13-1, they're top 10 in offensive EPA per play, top 10 in defensive EPA per play. Their quarterback's playing at, a top 10, 15 level statistically. Obviously, we know Patrick Mahomes is better than that, but you look at that team and you would think that they would have better showings in terms of the scoreboards and the record. And then that's just not the case. So it is kind of a tricky evaluation for the Chiefs as a whole.
Yeah, the good news is, and we just saw this against the Chargers-Chiefs game, their tackle situation is a tremendous mess. And DJ Humphries, who he played that game, is out today's game. Don't know how much longer he'd be out, if he's out much longer at all. But that situation does make things a bit better for the Chargers.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes has been hit, I think, like 31 times in the last 3 games, which would be, I think it was most in the league. So, yeah, it's been an issue. The Texans today, I think, will have a chance to hit him because they have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, that could certainly be something to monitor as they get closer to their playoffs push.
Yep.
All right, next here is the Buffalo Bills. Their offense is an absolute buzzsaw right now. Josh Allen is probably the MVP winner. Offensive EP per play, they're at 0.220. If you're at 0.2-ish, that means your offense is like extremely, extremely good. I think there's been, in the last 5 years, there's only been 3 other offenses that have hit 0.2 or more. And the Bills are on track to do that this year. The Ravens could also have a chance to do that. So they are far and away the best offense in terms of EPA per play and success rate. They have the potential MVP winner. Defensively, they're a little bit more of a mixed bag. They did kind of hit a little bit of a rebuild on defense, particularly in the secondary. So they're 14th in defensive EPA per play, still very good. McDermott is still a very, very good defensive coach, but they are a little lacking on the back end personnel standpoint. They don't really have a pass rusher that scares you. They have good pass rushers, but not great pass rushers. And then Josh Allen, like I mentioned, potential MVP, is third in EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation. He is turning the ball over at a significantly lower clip than he ever has before. He's adding a ton of value on the ground. So of all of the units that we are talking about today, I think the Buffalo Bills offense is probably the best one, and they probably have the best individual player in 2024.
Yeah, that sucks. If you look at the Bills as a whole on the season, you're thinking like, okay, like, you know, they mentioned the losses here. They barely beat the Jets, lost to Houston, lost to Baltimore. Okay, but then like, man, some of these wins and what they can do when they turn it on offense. The Chargers, look, we saw it against the Broncos. It was an incredible showing. I don't know how often they can do that. And the Bills can just, it's nasty right now. What they've been able to do, what Josh Allen's done to like the second half-ish of the season is just ridiculous. That performance against the Rams, I know they lost that game.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't because of Josh Allen. That was a Herculean effort by the likely MVP of the NFL. So just a tricky place to play as well in Buffalo. Thank goodness the Chargers beat the Broncos. We might not even have to see the Chargers play the Bills until at least the divisional round, which is awesome.
Yeah. So we'll I have zero interest in playing this offense. Like when the Chargers were, being considered in potential for the 7 seed, like if they lost to the Broncos, they probably would be locked into the 7 seed essentially. I was not looking forward to the potential of having to go up to Buffalo and having to play a playoff game there. It's just, it's not a situation I really want to see with the way that Josh Allen is playing, with the way their offensive line is playing. We haven't really discussed this much, but the way the Chargers pass rush has looked the last couple of weeks against the great offensive lines that they've played against, I would want zero part of the Buffalo Bills, because that is kind of a blowout potential category for me, with the way that Josh Allen could play versus the secondary and the way the offensive line could kind of handle the Chargers pass rush. So thankfully that might not happen. Again, we'll see kind of how seeding sorts out.
Yeah.
The best wins, I think you could argue the Bills have the 2 best wins of any NFL team in the league this year. They beat the Chiefs at home 30-21, and then they went into Detroit this past week and won 48-42, and it was an amazing game. I was keeping an eye on it while the Chargers were losing to the Bucs. So it was like 2 great wins. Winning at Seattle 31-10 is another good win. They have a few good wins. So again, the Bills, I think, have probably the best resume of any NFL playoff team, if you want to use kind of like a college term, because they have great wins. They don't have a ton of bad losses, although they did lose to Houston, who's kind of fallen off a bit. Then they did have a really, really poor showing at Baltimore, but they have a great resume. They have a great quarterback, great offense. The Bills are kind of humming right now.
Yeah, I mean, you beat the AFC's number 1 seed and the NFC's number 1 seed, and the only reason you didn't beat the AFC's number 2 seed is it's you. So like, pretty freaking good by the Bills. Scary for sure. How much of I say this as a Chargers fan, ask us as a Chargers fan, how much of the Bills not necessarily getting it done in the postseason matters to you at all here?
I don't put too much stock into it. I mean, when they lost that overtime game against the Chiefs, Josh Allen had one of like the 2 or 3 best playoff performances in NFL history by EPA per play and by like passing grade and all this stuff. He was great that game. Unfortunately, just lost the coin toss. And then when they played the Bengals, as Athir points out in the chat, again, Josh Allen played great. The defense just couldn't really get off the field. There were a bunch of injuries. They were down to like their 4th and 5th string safeties, and their corners back room was a mess. And So I don't put too much stock into it. That was just kind of the defense not really showing up. And so last year when they played the Chiefs again, I thought they played great. It was just Patrick Mahomes was better that day. So we've seen that story a few times. I don't really hold that against him that or them that they haven't been able to get by the Chiefs when the Chiefs have been the dynasty of our generation. So
Yeah.
I don't put too much stock into it, especially as it pertains to like potentially facing the Chargers.
Sure.
They played the game before they lost to the Chiefs in 2020. They played the Patriots and they beat the Patriots like 45-10 in a playoff game. So they have shown that they can win a playoff game. They have shown that they can play extremely well in a playoff game. Can they beat the Chiefs is a different conversation, but can they beat the Chargers in a playoff game? Like, yes, emphatically, they can definitely do that.
Yep. Yeah.
Unfortunately. But we might not even get the chance to see them at this point. So, but I would say the Bills are the team that I would want to play the least in the playoffs, like comfortably for me.
Oh, yeah. That's everything to do with the offense, the weather, the defense obviously being solid enough. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah. All right, next in here, Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, the Chargers lost to them earlier in the season. Justin Herbert could barely move. The Steelers obviously were playing Justin Fields. So a lot has changed since that point. The Pittsburgh Steelers obviously have changed quarterbacks. They're kind of a middle of the pack offensive team right now. They are 17th in EPA per play. They're actually behind the Chargers, who moved up a few spots after this past week. So they're at negative EPA per play overall on offense. Defensively, very, very good. As we know, they are 6th in defensive EPA per play. And there's a bunch of other statistics, but this is kind of a brief overview. And then Russell Wilson, he's more so an EPA per play guy right now because there's a lot of explosive passes. Completion percentage over expectation is not his real strong suit. And, that really is kind of their offense. They want to run the football. They want to throw the football down the field. And that's kind of how they're living. So if you can kind of take away those things, then Russell Wilson's going to struggle a bit. But right now, up until last week, he's been, really kind of rejuvenated down the field so far.
Yeah, they're a tricky team. Obviously, did not lose to Russell Wilson the previous time, but they still have the defense. They still have the rest of the team. Just the quarterbacks changed. And, Russell Wilson's doing pretty well for them, being paid by the Broncos to do so, I believe.
Yes.
How I feel about Pittsburgh, I wouldn't love to go play there. But it's not the worst matchup. That might all change depending on how they do these next few games. So they got to play Baltimore, then they got to play Kansas City.
Yeah,
they pulled 2 wins out in those next 2 somehow, and that means they've either beaten Kansas City or they've swept Baltimore this season.
Yeah,
I mean they will drag you into it, and they will be a very close game. Awful place to play, I'm sure, in the postseason. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
East Coast trip for sure, but the rockin' fan base is going to be something ridiculous. So it's not a team that scares me. Like the Bills, that's like a blowout potential game, as you mentioned. The Steelers are more so just like, what they are, and that's not like a scary outcome.
Yeah,
but I can just see the ugly loss the Chargers could have on the road, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I think, the environment obviously in either place would be difficult. The Steelers in the playoffs at home, like that's a difficult potential matchup. But when you look at like on the field, there's a very clear path to success for the defense in that one. And, your defense can, I think, at minimum keep you in the game. Whereas the Bills, I just don't think that's really the case. And so you look at the defensive opportunity there, the offense, obviously you would have to really be concerned again about the interior pass rush of the Steelers. But the way that the tackles performed in that first half, the way that Justin was kind of being able to stay on schedule, obviously J.K. Dobbins, that was when the run game was really kind of performing at its best. And J.K. had a pretty good game in the first half. And so I would feel comfortable about the Chargers at least being in it in the fourth quarter. Yes, it's a difficult place to play. There are things about the Steelers that I would be concerned about. But overall, I think this team could match up pretty well with what the Steelers do on offense and on defense. And then you would just have to kind of overcome the typical Mike Tomlin fourth quarter
Yeah.
stereotype that happened and that the Chargers were not able to overcome in week 4. But
Yeah.
again, so much has changed, and Herbert wasn't even playing in the fourth quarter at that point.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I would be pretty excited and curious about potentially playing the Steelers in the playoffs personally.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they did almost have it, and the energy they brought to the beginning of that game, the defense is flying around,
Yeah.
maybe too aggressive potentially for one Derwin, but is what it is. They had that game if they could have stayed healthy, but then they lost both their tackles and their quarterback. That genuinely doesn't help you very much when you're facing the Steelers and TJ Watt.
No.
So yeah, both tackles being healthy, Herbert being on the field and healthier, obviously, would probably help things.
Yeah. So again, their resume could look very different over the next couple of weeks, as Tyler mentioned. They have the opportunity to get 2 big wins over the next couple of weeks. And right now, so you look at their best wins. They beat the Chargers again. How good was that win? You can kind of debate given the Chargers situation. They won at Washington when the Commanders were kind of humming, and I think a lot of people, that's when they started to take the Steelers a little bit more seriously. They did beat the Ravens previously, 18-16. So it was a very typical Steelers game. Steelers, Ravens, physical, everything like that. And then losses, though, they have had some puzzling showings. They lost to the Browns at Cleveland 24-19 in that snow game. So again, you can kind of justify that. They lost to the Colts at Indianapolis when Joe Flacco was playing. So that was, again, Justin Fields was playing for the Steelers. So you kind of had backup versus backup. And then this past week with no George Pickens, they lost 27-13 at Philadelphia. They needed a garbage time touchdown to get to 13 points. So it was really not that close on the field, on the scoreboard, as you might look at it in the box score standpoint. So some mixed bag showings from the Steelers, not a ton of great wins, but they are obviously currently the 3 seed right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Next one here is the Houston Texans, who I think are by far and away the best potential matchup for the Chargers. Their offense has been kind of a disaster so far this year. They have dealt with a lot of injuries. Their offensive line, you want to talk about bad offensive line, man. They give up a pressure rate that is extremely concerning. CJ Stroud has been hit a ton this year. They're 22nd in offensive EP per play, and they were considered like a potential Super Bowl team heading into the season. I think they were 3rd or 2nd, even potentially in like preseason Super Bowl odds from the AFC. Like they were the preseason darling. They took that title away from the Chargers for the last few years. So they're 22nd in offensive EPA per play. CJ Stroud is 27th in quarterback EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation. So their offense is really struggling. Their defense on the other side has lived up to expectations, led by, of course, the 2 edge rushers. They're 3rd in defensive EP play. I think they're also 3rd in pressure rate. The defense is outstanding. They have great corners. They have good linebackers. They have good defensive linemen. There's not a lot of weaknesses. And then obviously DeMeco Ryans is DeMeco Ryans. So the Houston Texans are, again, they already have their division wrapped up because the rest of the AFC South is terrible. But their offense, I think, would really lend itself towards a potential positive matchup for this Chargers team.
Yeah, it's the worst offensive line in the AFC. Statistically, that seems to be the case. And yeah, like Tunsil, they have Tunsil, and otherwise it's kind of a bit of a mess the rest of the way. It really just shows how difficult it is to do what Justin Herbert did his rookie year and then the years after that, because there's a lot of moving Stroud ahead of Herbert. And I'd rather have Stroud for the next 10 years than Herbert based on what he did. And Stroud's rookie season was awesome. Obviously, like we understand what it looks like for the quarterback to come in and just go on a tear, but very difficult to do it again. And clearly with Stroud this year, not that it's all his fault, but it hasn't been the same. It is not the step forward they were hoping for. And so with that, with the offensive line and the fact that it's like the shortest distance I think they'd have to travel, it's in a dome. It's nothing against Houston Texans fans, but like it's not traveling to Pittsburgh. It's not having to go to Buffalo.
The environment,
absolutely. So overall, like, yeah, they are the 4th seed. They are the less losing team of the AFC South. So of course I'll jinx myself and they'll go lose now, but this is the matchup we all want. This is the matchup we all want.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of different ways the Chargers could play the Houston Texans. Obviously, the Texans would have to win. The Texans would either get up to the 3 seed and the Chargers could be the 6 seed. That's obviously I feel like the more unlikely path given who the Texans play over the next couple of weeks. And what, like, again, they're already losing to the Chiefs right now. I can't imagine what Chris Jones in the fourth quarter is going to be doing today. Next week, they play TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward. Like, their offense is in for just an absolute grudge match over the next couple of weeks. So the Colts, or the Texans kind of feel locked into the 4 seed to me. They could pull off a win this week or next week. They have the talent, they have the coaching, right? But it just feels like they're probably locked into the 4 seed. So the Chargers would have to get up to the 5 seed at that point. So they obviously don't have the tiebreaker over the Steelers or the Ravens. But if one of those 2 teams loses out, then the Chargers could jump into the 5 spot.
Yeah. Texans play the Ravens next week for what it's worth.
Oh, I thought they played the Steelers next week.
I have them as Baltimore on Christmas.
Oh, okay. My bad. Either way, I mean,
AFC North.
Namdi Matabike. Have fun.
Yeah. Have fun with the other guy who's really good.
With the other guys. So resume-wise, you look at the Texans. They did beat the Bills. Again, a lot has changed since that point. They are 2-0 against the Colts. They beat the Cowboys to death. They're not a ton of good wins on their resume either. Again, some very poor showings. They lost to the Titans a couple of weeks ago. They lost to the Vikings early in the season and got killed. They lost to the Jets. Like, there's a very clear path to how you can potentially beat the Houston Texans. And if you can heat up CJ Stroud, then you have a great chance of winning that game. And I think obviously would feel comfortable with the Chargers potentially doing that.
Yeah, I guess looking at their losses at Green Bay, they lost by 2. Against Detroit, they lost by 3, which I know isn't like, they lost those games, but they didn't get killed. So they kind of kept up with Green Bay, kept up with the Lions. So there's,
Yeah, if you're a Texans fan, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, like, you have CJ Stroud, you have Nico Collins, your offense could theoretically go off at any point. But their offensive line, man, is just awful. Like, it's imagine like 2020 Chargers, and that's probably the equivalent of what you're getting in Houston right now.
Imagine I guess I would say 4 years of the Chargers, but they actually have a defense. So I take that back.
Yeah, their defense is great for sure.
Yeah.
Last one here is the Baltimore Ravens. This will obviously be another rematch for the Chargers. Their defense has improved a little bit over the last couple of weeks. I think when the Chargers and Ravens played, the Ravens defense was like 27th in defensive EPA per play. They're now up to 21st. So they've gotten some interceptions and more sacks and things like that. So they definitely have improved. Offensive EPA per play, again, they're right behind the Bills at 0.198. So their second total. They have cooled down a little bit. When the Chargers played them, they were doing like just historically good things. They're still very, very good. They're still very much an elite offense, but they've cooled down a little bit from a historical standpoint.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is ahead of Josh Allen for what it's worth in EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation. So that's kind of the Ravens haven't changed a ton, right? It's kind of the same deal. Defense has improved a little bit. Offense has kind of taken a slight step back. But otherwise, I think we kind of know what the Ravens are about and what would give the Chargers potential problems.
Yeah, this was a rough one to watch up until obviously the Bucks game. This was like the awful loss of the season, really their only one, where I just watched Derrick Henry be unstoppable. It didn't matter. Now, they were missing some players, sure, but I don't even know if it would have mattered at the time. With Lamar, he barely had to break a sweat. And they just destroyed the Chargers at home. It was awful. They had the garbage-ish time touchdown with like 3 defensive pass interferences that got the Chargers closer to the end zone. It was rough to watch them play the Ravens. So they are one of the 3 like worst matchups for the Chargers for sure. It just kind of depends on where they're at maybe by the time they get to the playoffs, because when the Chargers played them, they were an absolute freaking buzzsaw. They were kind of the Bills-ish, and they were just starting to find their defense a bit more. And their defense has gone from like 32nd or whatever it was all the way to like the 21st. So they're
Yeah.
improving in that regard. So we'll see. But it's a scary matchup.
It is a scary matchup, and I think the way that their defense has kind of performed, over the last couple of weeks would give me a little bit more pause. The Chargers offense theoretically could close the season strong and stuff like that. So again, some things can change, but this Ravens team, I think, gives you some concerns in a lot of the areas that we all know about, right? And so, what does this look like if, the Chargers theoretically, if they decide to sell out and stop Derrick Henry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you still have Lamar Jackson, you still have Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, who can go slice and dice you on from a passing game perspective. So, the offense, I feel like the Ravens offense presents a lot of similar challenge to the Bills offense. The difference is the Ravens defense, the Ravens special teams, could give the Chargers a way to potentially winning that. The Steelers did beat the Ravens a couple of weeks ago, but in that game, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals and an extra point. Alex Katzen did a wonderful article kind of breaking down, Justin Tucker's struggles this year. And does that kind of happen in a playoff game? It certainly is a possibility, kicking in the cold wind. Baltimore's not like a super easy place to kick in general. So there's I would say a more clear path to beating the Ravens than the Bills, but not by a ton, not by very much, I would say.
Yeah, I agree there.
So resume standpoint, they have some good wins. They thumped the Bills 35-10. They thumped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 41-31. The Buccaneers needed a garbage time touchdown to make it that close. They do have some bad losses as well. Obviously, they lost to the Raiders back in week 2. They were up, I think, 23-10 during that game, and then lost 26-23. So very, very strange. And then obviously they lost to the Steelers a couple of weeks ago. So there's a chance they have there's a chance the Ravens can get up to the 3 seed. There's a chance they can get up to the 5 seed. It's kind of 50-50-ish. So they obviously have to beat the Steelers today. And if they do that, I'm sure that would help their 3 seed chances tremendously.
Yep.
Okay. I think that is it. So the last thing I wanted to mention here before we get into some questions, heading into the Broncos game, the Chargers were about 50-50 between the 6 seed and the 7 seed, according to ESPN's FPI percentage. After winning, the most likely scenario is that they are the 6 seed. The ESPN's FPI gives them a 57% chance to get the 6 seed, a 25% chance at the 5 seed, and then a 16% chance at the 7 seed. So according to ESPN's model, the most likely outcome, obviously, is that the Steelers or the Ravens are the 3 seed. So I think everybody should be rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers today. Is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, no, I would agree there. Root for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I guess root for the Texans next week when they play the Ravens. There is a scenario where the Ravens could fall to the 7th seed, but we'll see. But yeah, Pittsburgh, they got to beat Baltimore because then they play Kansas City next week. So we'll see.
Yeah. So I think that is, of the likely outcomes, that is my preferred option. I would much rather play at Pittsburgh than at any of these other teams not named Houston.
Yeah. So do you have like a power ranking? For me, it's like Texans are the one you want to play the most.
Yes.
Then I think the Steelers, then the Ravens, Chiefs, and Bills for me.
Yeah, I would say Texans definitely number 1. If they can play the Houston Texans, that was obviously the most ideal scenario here. Steelers would be 2nd. I would say Chiefs 3rd.
That's fair. I would put them 3rd if they didn't have a bye.
Yes. In a world where the Chiefs are a 2 seed, which again, not super likely, but I would say Chiefs 3rd. I would say Ravens 4, and then Bills 5.
Yeah. So not Buffalo.
Yeah, I would comfortably do not want to play the Bills.
No, thank you.
So yeah, Steelers rematch would be a lot of fun. I think it's the Chargers' best path to winning a non-Houston game. So would love to see the Houston Texans. It would be great. Like you mentioned, the least travel, playing a dome, fan situation would be a little bit, I think, more favorable for the Chargers. I think Chargers fans, potentially myself included, will be traveling to that game. So I would love to see that scenario if the Texans can get up to the 3 or the Chargers can get up to the 5. That's like the most positive outcome for us, I would say.
Yeah. My coworker announced her 50th birthday party thing on January 11th, which is wild card weekend. I was just like, nah, I'll wait to RSVP.
Yeah, 100%. The Chargers traditionally have played on a Saturday, so we'll see what happens there. But yes, appreciate our first super chat. Anthony Navarro says, need that Pittsburgh rematch. I think it would be fun. I think the Chargers would be kind of chomping at the bit to play them. I do, because I think it was so long ago. So much has changed, so many injuries. I think the Chargers would be fired up for that one.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that playoff preview. Let's take some questions. As always, the super chats ensure that your question gets answered. But we will jump around the chat and have a good time. Our big celebrity fan, Justin Timberlake, have a Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. I appreciate it. This is going to be our last show up until the game next week. So we are not going to be doing a show during Christmas. I'm going to be in Utah with my family and not really having an opportunity to record. And Tyler is going to have his own holiday stuff as well. So we appreciate you guys. Hopefully you have a great and wonderful Merry Christmas. And after today, we will see you next Saturday after the Chargers play the Patriots.
Yeah, it's a perfect. It's literally perfect right now because they play the Patriots and the Raiders. They basically have the playoffs locked up. So it's just kind of gets you to enjoy the holidays. There's no pressing like, oh gosh, who are they playing? How do they get to the 7th seed? How do they squeeze in? Who needs to lose? We're not worrying about like coaching search right now. I can't imagine doing Christmas. How did we do the holidays and the coaching search last year? I have no idea, but much more mellow this time.
Yeah, luckily I was at home for Christmas last year, so that helped me personally. But I'm excited to get to Utah, visit some family. I haven't been to Utah since last summer, like summer 2023. So it's been a hot minute for us.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys all have a wonderful holiday. Great time celebrating with your families. Eat good food. Watch football, basketball, whatever your thing is. Hope you have a wonderful time. Eddie Dale and some others have asked about Deontay Johnson. So Johnson obviously was a potential trade candidate who we were very much in favor of. The Ravens ended up swooping in for basically nothing. And Deontay Johnson has acted like a child, apparently, and has refused to go to extra meetings to get caught up and has not been the most supportive teammate in the world. So the Ravens have decided to waive him. He will go on waivers on Monday. The Chargers would be 21st, I believe, in waiver priority. And according to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, are potentially interested in putting a claim in on Deontay Johnson. So what are your thoughts here, Tyler, on the potential addition?
Yeah, I mean, if you had, at the trade deadline, we're like, yeah, go get a player and go get Deontay Johnson. If he's available, go for it. And they were interested. And then now, based on what's happened, I get it. The Chargers could definitely use another weapon. They also need to attend meetings, and like want to get caught up. Like you really have to get caught up now because the Chargers play the postseason in a few weeks. And so if you're just actively refusing, I'm not that I followed the Ravens very closely this season, but it's not like John Harbaugh is some new coach and can't put a team together.
Yeah.
So if they're kind of done with him, I think he'd probably text his brother and be like, get the F away from this situation. Their buyer's remorse for sure on that one on their end.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. And there were some things that came out after the Panthers traded him where they were really trying to get rid of him. And so he was productive when he was on the field in Carolina, especially with Andy Dalton. He's a good receiver, but it sounds like there's some real, character concerns here for Deontay Johnson. And I don't know, man. Like, do the Chargers need some receiver help? Yeah, I think so. I think they could use another player. And we talked about potentially trading for him, but then all this other stuff came out. And there's 2 weeks left in the season. The Chargers might be resting starters in week 18. Like, I just don't know if you really want to do this. Like, if he goes through waivers unclaimed and you want to sign him to the practice squad, sure, I don't have any issues with that. But putting in a waiver claim in him and like putting a lot of time to make sure you get the most out of that investment, I don't know. I think it's just kind of not worth it for me. If he's a practice squad signing, cool, whatever. But I don't know really like how much this helps with 2-3 weeks left in the season.
What is their current depth chart now with Rigger? Not depth chart, their roster. So it's McConkey, Johnson, Palmer, Davis, Chark is on the active roster.
Yeah.
And then everyone else is Rice is on IR, Rager's on IR, Fajoko's on IR. So I guess they don't have to cut anyone. Well, cut a like there's no like, oh, Brendan Rice gets cut in the situation for him.
Yeah, that's funny. They haven't updated the roster in a minute.
Yeah,
Rager's still on it, but I guess if you claim him, you would have to cut somebody because you're at 53 now. And I don't know, man. Like, who are you cutting from this team right now? I guess, unfortunately, you probably could put Denzel Perryman on IR. Marcus May was potentially severely injured. You could put him on IR. Which kind of sucks, but I think right now the Chargers probably need some more secondary help than they do receiver help.
Yeah.
So I would kind of prefer that they go looking there, personally. And then they have Des Fitzpatrick and Jalen Johnson and Laviska Shenault on the practice squad for what it's worth.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think I agree with Ben Herbert. If all that's true, why would you bring in a guy who's going to ruin what you've got going on right now?
Yeah. Especially after you beat the Broncos. Like, I mean, the vibe was probably not all that great after the Buccaneers, but now, right, like you have so much positive momentum after beating the Broncos. You're set up perfectly to go beat these final two teams if you have seating on the line, stuff like that. I don't see how it's worth it for potentially 3 games. If this was 6 weeks ago, I would probably be more in favor of it. You can work some things out. Maybe in this kind of situation, he's more involved in the game plan, so he's more involved. But I just think it's too late in the season to really do anything here.
Yeah, I agree. Texans just scored, so they're up 10-7 on the Chiefs. Wait to the last 2 minutes of the game where they're going to lose it.
Nice. Yes, this is a great point as well from LD Bruin. Daniel Popper on his Substack yesterday said that he believes Simi Fehiko's 21-day window will be open this week. So the Chargers could get some reinforcements there.
Good. If Chark's not part of your offensive game plan, barring like the 3 injuries in front of him, yeah, Fehoko being out there is, I mean, they used him like crazy in the run game. So everyone, when I mentioned like, oh yeah, Fajoko's back, yay, sometimes people are like, who cares? Like he's not receiving much, but the blocking on film is like huge for them.
Yeah. Chark logged 12 snaps on Thursday, so he's still like not really involved at all. So I would much prefer to see Simi get back in the roster than probably go sign Deontay Johnson.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What did we think DJ Chark was going to do this year? Like what was our expectation?
It
wasn't 3 catches for 25 yards. I'll tell you that.
No, I know. I think I had like a statistical.
Yeah, we might have put something together. The assumption, I guess, depends on when we were covering that, because before he went on IR, it seemed like, wow, okay, this is your, wide receiver 2.
Okay, so we had a bold prediction show back in June, and one of the bold predictions was that Hayden Hurst was going to lead the team in receiving touchdowns. That was a bold prediction show. It was a bold prediction.
Yeah. We probably discussed like McConkey as the actual leader, or like Gus. I think, or like Gus Edwards maybe. Yeah, that's probably our 2 picks there. I definitely didn't think 25 receiving yards and buried behind Rager on the chart.
No, definitely not. I mean, we were kind of skeptical of DJ Chark. I think we were definitely not as skeptical as what it's been.
No.
But I don't think either of us were really expecting things to funnel through him. I think we were both on the same page that it was going to be Ladd and Palmer, and then Quentin and Chark would kind of duke it out after that. And obviously Quentin has run away with that particular battle, and I think he's even ahead of Palmer at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's gone. the receiver room, I think, has gone about as I would have expected. Obviously, Ladd has exceeded expectations, but it being Ladd, Palmer, Quentin, I think should not have been a surprise to anybody.
No.
Yeah, this seems about right for Chark. 400 yards, 5 T's. That's probably what I would have expected. Obviously, Herbert's injuries has kind of impacted things a lot, and but I think that's probably what I would have thought.
Yeah.
So Joe Ortiz has done a lot of great things. Unfortunately, that has been a miss.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we got about 8 more minutes here. We'll take some questions. So go ahead and fire away, and then we'll head out for a week. Alex says if we rest people against the Raiders, it gives Chark an opportunity. Yeah, maybe you get Taylor Heineke and DJ Chark, and you get a couple jump balls in there and figure how it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Glizzy Gilbert 69, nice. Do you think Asante Samuel is going to play again this season? I think we have gone well past the point of a potential return for him.
Yeah, it's over for him. It's beyond an injury. He will be on a different team next season, and wish him well. Vernon Rice is not playing again this season. I can't imagine. They have done everything but activate him off of IR. I'm honestly surprised Hayden Hurst returned.
Me too.
I didn't realize that he was obviously he's been eligible, but I didn't realize he was going to return.
Yeah, that was definitely a surprise. So, it's unfortunate for Asante, but the last time Harbaugh was asked about him, he was basically like, "I don't have any updates for the foreseeable future." Was kind of the vibe that we got from him. So,
yeah,
it sucks, man. Asante had such a promising rookie season, had some great moments after that, but whatever has gone on, plus the injury, it just it's the end of the Asante era, if you will.
Yeah. Leon Sanchez asked, ideal free agent pickup next season. We're going to get into that. We've already started some of the breakdowns of that. I've even looked at like some cut candidates that aren't free agents, but they could be because like the Saints have no money, the Browns have no money, that sort of thing. Same as it is every year, thanks to your stupid decisions. So we'll get into that eventually.
Yeah, things will change a lot. I mean, how the Chargers spend money with the guys that they want to bring back also super important. We've talked about some of these defensive players, man. I mean, Poona Ford just continues to be amazing. And Tier Tart was awesome on Thursday. Those are 2 players I think should definitely be back next season. There's a murkier path for like Denzel Perryman to come back, and obviously we're hoping for a year 2 breakout for Junior Colson. But I would not be opposed to bringing Perryman back. You have your backup quarterback situation with Heineke being a free agent, so the Chargers have some very important decisions to make, but I think we will see the Chargers spend on an offensive lineman. I think that's a pretty safe prediction. I don't know if it's going to be the player that fans want right now, but I think they will spend on the offensive line.
Yeah, I think so too.
Tara Romero back in here. We appreciate her so much. She wants to know, do we see more Stone Smart usage? So you mentioned Hayden Hurst coming back, being a surprise. I was nervous that would kind of really bleed into things for Stone Smart, but Stone logged 39 snaps on Thursday. Hayden Hurst only logged 8, so it was very much in favor of Stone in that regard. And then obviously Stone Smart still had the 4 targets, 3 catches, 37 yards, so he was still very much involved, and I think that's how it should be going forward. And when Will Dissly comes back, I think we see the best version of the Chargers tight end room with the way that Stone has kind of come on recently.
Yeah, I agree. Will Dissly's missed 2 games?
2 games
so far? Yeah.
Did the Texans just get a fumble 6? Is that real?
I was waiting for an update on ESPN. I don't see it yet. The Chiefs are on offense. I'm still 2nd and 10 on a pass to Pacheco incomplete. So someone else let me know if you're watching it live.
Any update on J.K. Dobbins? He is eligible to return from injury reserve this upcoming week. We'll see what happens. His knee sprain is a little bit of a tricky situation given his history, but he is eligible to come back this week.
Cool.
Butters ID. Don't forget about Slater's mega contract this offseason. That dude was so good on Thursday night. I watched the tape last night. There were a couple pressures that were credited to Slater because of a stunt, but in like one-on-one situations against Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper, that might be in the running for like best performance I've studied from Rashawn Slater. Like he was absolutely dominant, and considering that one of those players was getting legitimate defensive player of the year candidate hype, Rashawn Slater, like he was incredible. I think he was very motivated to send a message to people in that specific matchup, and he completely had Nick Bonito in hell. It was a treat to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into the tape. Didn't get to. I went home and took a nap yesterday. But yeah,
that's fair, man. Christmas break. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and I'm not sick yet, knock on wood. So we'll see how it goes. But excited to watch it. So Duke Manyweather has been not critical of Zion Johnson, but openly honest throughout this season about some of the struggles and leaving himself vulnerable over his toes, etc. Then yesterday he tweets, "Hey, hats off to Zion Johnson. He's improved so much. You look at the numbers; they're not pretty, but we use the numbers because it's all we've got to track pressures in PB and stuff like that. I think you and I come out of most games going like, I don't know about some of this, some of that, assignments and who's assigned the pressures. Anyway, did you watch Zion like specifically? How'd that game look? Was it somewhere in the middle of the numbers and what Duke Manyweather said?
I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I think as we've kind of highlighted this season, he's a great run blocker right now.
Yeah, he is.
His ability to reach block and cut off defenders is really, really a strength of his. And so that's becoming more and more evident. The Chargers are so close to figuring things out from a run blocking perspective. But it's gotten to the point now where like the tight ends are blocking really well, the tackles are blocking really well, Zion's blocking really well. And then it's just like every other run blocking rep, like Bradley Bozeman and Trey Pipkins, kind of alternate like a bad rep between the two of them. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
But Zion he's so good. There were a couple of reps at the goal line where he put the Broncos defensive lineman DJ Jones or Malcolm Roach like in the dirt. Like he's run blocking, I think, at the highest level of his career. He did get beat by Zach Allen a couple times one-on-one. I think that's fair to say. But the good thing for me over the last like 6 weeks in particular is that the issues with stunts have kind of gone away.
Yeah.
Like he seems to be picking up stunts at a much higher rate. And now the stunt issues are all kind of happening again with Bradley Bozeman and Trey Pipkins and the running backs.
Right.
So I think Zion has improved a lot, but I wouldn't say he's like, no brainer, extension kind of candidate at this point. But I think I am probably leaning towards him coming back as a starter next season, just because I think he's played well enough to be that kind of player. And I would want to see him get back next to a good center. I think as we've learned, the center position is a huge part from the interior.
Yeah. Zion and Slater off the left side, what they can do is it's so beautiful in the run game. And then it's like, Bradley, go, you come on, man. And that's not his game. Unfair to compare him to two of the most athletic like offensive line prospects ever. So not fair, but it's like, it's so close. So a better center, a more athletic center, that left side could kill next season.
Yeah, if they could get Ryan Kelly in this group, man. Like I know Ryan Kelly is older and I know he's like currently injured, but that kind of like profile, like he's got the size, he's got the athletic traits. He's the best veteran center free agent out there.
Right.
You would have to definitely clear the medicals, but if you could go get him, I kind of doubt they would sign an expensive center and right guard, but maybe at that point you can go draft a potential starter right guard kind of deal. I don't know. We'll dive into all of that, but Ryan Kelly to me just would be a perfect fit in what this offense wants to do.
Yeah.
And then you would just have the center position kind of fortified there. So that would be a lot of fun.
Yep. Still, I'm excited to have the same discussion we've had every year about Slater being a guard.
People in the Facebook chat still talk about Slater and Alt switching sides, and I'm like, they're both fucking awesome at what they're doing right now. Like, we don't need to change it.
Yes.
Alt also, by the way, outstanding performance. It's just there's the Herbert scrambling thing, like, it's only really possible from Thursday because of the way the tackles played.
Yeah.
Because whenever there were pressures up the middle, he always had an alley out wide.
Mm-hmm.
And the tackles, man, are just, it's so much fun to watch. I almost like, so usually when I watch a play, like, I'll watch like the passing or defensive coverage concept, and then I'll like rewatch like the whole wide view.
Yeah.
So I'll watch it one time through, and then I'll rewatch it for Herbert, and then I'll get to the end zone view, and I'll watch like one side. I'll take two views. Sometimes I just kind of like don't watch the tackles because I just trust them to like do their thing.
Oh yeah.
And I have to like stop and go, no, watch them. Like, you have to watch them and appreciate what they're doing, because it's just outstanding.
Yeah, it is. We're lucky. I mean, Joe Alt's going to allow, I know, kill him, more than 20 pressures, I think, this season, but he's under 20 right now. Like, there is a world where he allows under 20. And the fact that's even a conversation right now is absurd.
Yeah, I've been doing this like running tweet for Joe, and the numbers he's putting up, the grades he has. There's been like 3 rookie offensive tackles in the PFF era that have also done what he's done. And one is Rashawn. The other one is Tristan Wirfs, and then Ryan Ramczyk. So
it was pretty
good company for Joe Alt this season.
Yeah, it cracks me up that Lane Johnson allowed 60 pressures his rookie year.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Andrew Thomas was like 65.
Yeah, horrible. I mean, there have been some awful. Like the outcome. Yeah, Brendan Slater better be in the Pro Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah, him.
Joe is like comfortably in at this point. I would say there's only like 3 more days, and Joe, I think, is the leading AFC offensive tackle, which is super cool. Shout out to Notre Dame fans for helping that happen. But if we don't get Rashawn Slater into the Pro Bowl, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be very, very upset. And he is, objectively speaking, from a numbers standpoint, the best offensive tackle in the AFC. And for him to potentially not get into the Pro Bowl, I know it doesn't matter. Technically, the game is stupid, but the award section matters for these players, man. Yes. And it helps get them into potential, contract extensions, a different kind of tier financially. It helps conversations for way jumping the gun, right? But like for the Hall of Fame, like, they still look at Pro Bowl nominations and things like that. Yeah. So please go out and vote for Rashawn Slater to get into the Pro Bowl. Again, Joe Alt, very cool, very happy for him that he's probably in, but Rashawn has been, I would say, significantly better, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but please get Rashawn Slater into the Pro Bowl.
So who do we think the Pro Bowlers are, or who do we think deserves it? I don't know, that seems kind of mean.
So the Slater. 2 tackles, I think, will get in. Yeah. We have to do our part and get Slater in, but I think the 2 of them should and will get in. It sounds like Dicker will get in.
Yeah, that's
and then Dayon has a chance. Derwin has a chance.
Yeah, Shaq is calling for Dayon Henley to get the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, and Dayon's numbers, I think, back that up. I think he should definitely be in the conversation at linebacker. But Derwin, I think, has a smaller chance. I think he should get in. Again, I think Chargers fans should go vote for him. But that's probably it. I think Herbert might get in as an alternate.
Yeah,
but with like Joe Burrow getting MVP hype on a bad team, and Josh Allen as the actual MVP, and Lamar probably second in MVP, and Mahomes,
Mahomes will get votes. Yeah,
tough.
Yeah, that is a tough group.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I would have said Khalil definitely deserved it. He's had some not super impactful games the past couple of weeks against 2 very good offensive tackle groups, but I think he should at least get some alternate potential votes. And then Scott Matlock, we were going to talk about Scott Matlock today. He had his best game of his career this past Thursday. It was great to see. I think he has a chance, but again, I think that fullback spot is probably going to Patrick Ricard.
Yeah. Is it
So,
Ricard Juszczyk again? Like the same stupid thing?
well, I mean, Juszczyk is the NFC, so it would be
Right.
Ricard, and then the Chiefs have the kid from UCLA. I forget his name.
The running back? Oh,
The
Carson
running back,
Steele.
Carson Steele. They have him as a fullback, and he's second in fullback voting. And he plays like
Oh.
3 snaps a game. It's
I was gonna say, like, what?
yeah, he is barely on the field. So, but I think Scott is third in fullback voting, if I'm not mistaken.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. How many fullbacks? Did they just pick one?
It's one on each side. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So if it's Ricard, there's a chance they make it to the Super Bowl, and then he would get an alternate nomination, but it'd still be cool. You guys listening know I was not a huge fan of that decision, but Scott Matlock has made some tremendous strides this season, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yep. About fell off of my bar stool when he juked out the defender.
I could not believe my eyes, man.
Oh my god, he's done more for this offense than DJ Chark. Like,
yeah, and Hayden Hurst probably too.
and Hayden Hurst, yeah. Like, I didn't see that coming. Like, I expected full freight train, physicality. Yeah. I didn't expect a whole. Yeah, it was impressive stuff.
When they announced that he was going to be the fullback, I was thinking like, okay, like a couple times at the goal line, they'll like kind of ease him into this thing. And then like week 1, they had him like blocking Max Crosby one-on-one. I was like, okay, like what is going on here?
Yeah, that'll never make me super thrilled.
No.
The vert routes, in the red zone, blocking the best edge rusher one-on-one. Don't love it, but when it's very successful, it's very successful. I feel like with Scott Matlock.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like the defensive tackle thing can just go away. Like he should just be fullback full time, going forward, and kind of workshop in the offseason how to become a little bit more of a receiving threat.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle wise, it's not great. It's not very good.
No, and he does look more slender. I could be wrong, but he looks. Maybe it's the 44. I don't know. So he actually has more receiving yards than DJ Chark.
That's sad. That is sad. But yeah, I mean that checks out, especially after
checks out.
Week, so that is definitely sad.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't have that on my bingo card.
No. Yeah. Jalen Reagor catching back shoulder fades against the Saints also was not on my bingo card. So it's just been kind of that year for the offense.
Yeah. Yeah, they deserve credit for how Matlock's developed.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys. That is going to do it for us today. We appreciate the questions, appreciate the turnout. Hopefully, we can get this out and to the audio audience quickly, and you guys can have a chat about the playoffs as well. So we appreciate all the great support. Hope you have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
It's just nice to go into this weekend with the Chargers already winning. It must be what it feels like when you don't procrastinate, but I do that. So
yeah, procrastination is real. I get that. But yeah, hopefully you guys have a great weekend watching football. We will see you back here next Saturday after the Chargers play the New England Patriots and potentially wrap up the 6th seed. So it should be a lot of fun. Make sure like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff helps continue to grow the show. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up and Merry Christmas.